Om Abhyasa Vairagyabhyam Tannirodha Tatra Stitau Yatno Bhyasaha Satu Dirgakala Narantarya Satkara Seviko Dridtabhumi Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. The illumined seers of India declare that discernment about the nature of reality and constant practice, when combined, are capable of destroying all the negative thought vibrations in the mind. When these two are brought together, the result is called authentic spiritual practice. Verily, this is the union of Shiva and Shakti. But this practice, called sadhana, must be maintained for a very long time and in an atmosphere of faith and devotion. Om peace, peace, peace. And the seers also declare that there shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect us, may Brahman sustain us, and may Brahman illumine our thinking process, free us from obstacles and impediments, and reveal to us the ignorance-destroying essence of the teachings. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. With that opening of slokas from the Upanishads and the Yoga Sutras, we begin into the second class of our series that's tentatively or subtitled Samara Sattva. We want to bring this divine coupling of Shiva and Shakti wherever we may find them, outside in our life, in our relationships, in our marriage, inside within our spiritual life, between the relationship between us and Ishvara or Ishvari. So many ways in which you can find this absolute power that's formless and transcendent, conjoined with its dynamic spiritual power to cause things to appear almost inconceivably, like the universe of 5 elements and objects around us. And those who are most informed about what the universe consists of, when they come to conclusions about it, which is part of what we'll talk about today, lakshana, how to make right conclusions and how to avoid wrong conclusions about the nature of existence, or what we call divine reality in spiritual life. When they come to see the world, then they have to make these sometimes harsh judgments on impermanence, as the Buddhists call it. Anicca, it's called in that tradition, that everything is impermanent and changing all the time. And so you have two kinds of souls that are spiritually awakened that try and deal with that. One of them, if you want to put it in Christian terms, is they depend on grace. And the other depends on hope or prayer. And grace takes a long time sometimes. You have to qualify for it. It can come out of nowhere, but most often it's connected to the karmas or actions that you did to make yourself prepared for the descent of grace. And the sadhana you did that I was just talking about, that intense spiritual practice. Hope is, one of our least favorite qualities. If prayer is rightly directed, it can be effective in connecting the external with the internal. In this case, the apparent self, ego, mind mechanism, with the actual true self, the Atman. But basically, in in India and in this philosophy, then when we look at that pairing, that coupling, there are a lot of manifestations of it that come out. And we'll look at some of those today in these teachings. I actually finished a new chart yesterday about Upasana and Vipassana. So I promised that last week. I'll make good on my promise and we'll be able to look at Upasana and Vipassana. The name in there that most people in the West will remember, the word in there is called asana, right? And so we know that people are pretty much caught up with physical asanas, and the authentic yogis and the rishis of India, the non-dualists and the great teachers, the illumined souls are trying to wait while we wait patiently, because that's the other side of the coin. You have this patience to wait for grace to come, and you do some practice in the meantime to prepare yourself. So that's that same coupling, only put in terms of the way India looks at it in its various darshanas or philosophies, like yoga and Vedanta. So in that context, then, we want to make ourselves prepared and ready for this union of Shiva and Shakti. In Kundalini terms, because we look at Sarvadarshana, we looked at it last week, different pathways that you might take up, different methods that are very helpful to us. I probably shouldn't just stop at one religion or one path and close the door, but dedicate yourself to one religion, one path, one ideal, one mantra, one guru, and so forth. Ishtanishta is called, but also then open up at the same time to this universal understanding that other methods also have something to tell you about. So that's why we look at this kind of divine coupling, and probably the most obvious way that it's ever been presented to us. Us means the world in this day and age, and also us means the West, and specifically here in America, is through Kundalini Yoga. When you say that there's this dynamic power that's coiled up at the base of the spine, and certain practices like mantra and so forth release this power, the Shakti power, and she begins to rise, as it were, up to the spiritual centers. This has got a physical asana kind of connotation to it, which is just a representation, because this isn't happening in the spine. This is happening in the mind. There's another spine, you might say, in the mind, a subtle body that has a spine, you might say, and that spine is seven-tiered, and it's got all of these levels of consciousness in it. So, you'll have to take your mind off of body preoccupation after you get your asana settled and your breathing equalized. Puraka, Kumbhaka, Rechaka, balance those out, and begin to have a little bit of delayed or arrested breathing called Kumbhaka happen to you, where the breathing slows down and you have this awakening to this inner subtle body. You go into a dream at night, for instance, and leave all the physical things behind, but you still have insights into and observances of objects and locations and situations that pass in your dream. So you're the witness of that. That's a good thing to recognize eventually, rather than just dreaming. From dreams awake, from bonds be free, know the truth. Thou art he, thou art she, my teacher used to say. So he is Shiva and she is Shakti. So when this quietude of mind is gained, and we'll talk about that in terms of impermanence and suffering and so forth that we just brought up. When that's accepted as to be a part and parcel of the world, then it's sort of not only a permission, but it's also an encouragement for you to withdraw from the world. That's what I was chanting, discernment. I see that that's all impermanent and changing. It's causing me suffering and it's contributing to my ignorance. Therefore, I think I can develop the power to withdraw, discrimination, discernment, based on knowing it to be impermanent, or what Vedanta calls unreal, anicca, what Krishna called it in the Gita, asukam anityam loka. This world is anityam, non-eternal, asukam, devoid of happiness. And people are thinking that the world is real and they can satisfy their desires and be happy here. So when that discerning aspirant realizes this is not the case, and they've had enough lifetimes, or maybe enough experiences in this very lifetime, that they begin to awaken, then they're given a sadhana, a mantra, and so forth, and maybe a course of meditation, and they'll go beyond the lower limbs of yoga, which is basically just sitting and breathing, and which is actually a part of the early Vipassana that we'll talk about today too. Upasana and Vipassana. They'll go beyond that, and they'll begin to have these experiences in the inner core of their being. That's this subtle mind. Sukshma sharira, it's called in Sanskrit. So there's the stula sharira. Stula means gross. That's the physical body of 5 elements with all its stuff in it. And the mind has stuff in it too. Chitti, it's called. And that stuff in the mind is much more potentially ennobling to get a hold of, like your thoughts. And you also want to, when you get a hold of those, realize that, oh, out there was impermanent suffering and change. Oh, I go into my mind hoping to find permanence and immutability, and I find out that's not the case, that my mind is restless, and sometimes it's sleepy and dull, and it won't wake up and stay awake when I want it to. So the outer and the internal becomes a reflection of itself, and that's why the Advaitas have told us, like Gaudapada, we don't see much difference between the waking and dreaming state, between the inner and outer. We see that both of those mirror each other, and they're constantly based in change. And we're looking for the changeless reality, which they call Brahman, or you could also call it, in other traditions, Allah, or you could call it Almighty Father, or the Great Spirit, something that's permanent, that will be with me at all times, which actually is with me at all times, but I've somehow failed to realize that. And so they're back then to these practices of bringing the power of Shakti together in us with the transcendent reality, Brahman and Shakti, like fire and its power to burn, Sri Ramakrishna called them, or water and its wetness. You cannot separate those, you see, but they are nevertheless appearing as 2 different things. So here we've got all this outer dynamism going on around us, which is part of that change, which is causing suffering. And we want to render it into Brahman. We want to see through it and see that there's nothing but an unchanging reality behind it. So everything that's changing, we're going to have to transform that poison into nectar. And so we're going to have to start seeing it as a manifestation of the divine Shakti power. Then she will conduct us inward to the transcendent Brahman, Shiva, Parama Shiva. This is a very tantric teaching. So I bring it up in Kundalini Shakti as a kind of preface to the second class. So we know when we go to this chart that I'm going to show you, which we actually started into yesterday, that there is a premise for this other than in Vedanta, but it's also there in yoga, specifically in Kundalini Yoga. So that launches us nicely off on our second class here, if as a preamble, I like to call it, to warm us up to this topic for the next hour or so. And I want to do a quick review of this chart because I can do this almost as a guide for you. So just follow the Sanskrit, the bouncing ball, from the top to the bottom. So basically, we're talking about here reaching the real bliss of Brahman. That's called Ananda. It has no opposite to it, like happiness has sorrow. But it's an eternal attribute or quality of divine reality called Brahman. That's its nature, part of its nature. So to find this real bliss of Brahman, then there's a course of teachings represented by these profound words that we went through last week, and I can take you straight through them here. Svatantra Sattva Bhava. You're going to want to have that idea dawn upon you that there is such a thing as true freedom. And the word for that's going to be moksha. See? So Svatantra means to kind of recognize that there is this freedom that lies behind all this bondage. Bondage to objects, bondage to suffering, bondage to families, bondage to five elements, bondage to nature. You could go on, different kinds of slavery people are in. We talked about that yesterday at satsang, right? Somebody brought up the term slavery and how India was kind of a foreign idea to India to have slavery in that country. So Svatantra Bhava, then as you realize that there's this freedom, then you must also know that Tatastha Lakshana, that there are conclusions you have to come to it about this freedom, but you have to avoid false conclusions about it. And that's a good part of the class I want to show you today in another chart. We'll go to that next. So making conclusions is very good, but we're finding out that when people do have this awakening to spiritual life and this exhilarating bliss and freedom that comes to them in a vision or in a dream or in a meditation, that they come out of that and because of lack of qualification, they start to go back to the old ways of thinking about it. You can't judge these great visions at the same level that you had your worldly experiences. Your mind is lifted up, so you have to lift up your mind in order to interpret it properly. You come back down to your old level of consciousness and try and look at that vision, you're probably running the risk of making some wrong conclusions about it. That's tataksha lakshana. Basically, you have to be free of those. And your guru, your acharya, your teacher, will help you stay away from those false conclusions. Many of these false conclusions are old habits of thinking. You'll see when we get to it. Then Sandilya Vidya comes next. So you'll have to realize at the same time then that in order to follow up with this original vision that you had of Brahman that inspired you so much, you're going to have to commit to making that vision, what's represented by that vision, your chosen ideal. So I found an ideal that's beyond the world now. I had a vision of it. Now I want to capture that and commit to it. That's Sandilya Vidya in a nutshell. After that, you go forward and there's Sarvadarshana Chara. Achara means to qualify. So in order to follow all in this train of teachings that I'm giving you right now, represented by these powerful ancient Sanskrit words, then you have to open up to all the darshanas. That is, you'll, as I said earlier, establish yourself in one of them with a single guru, single mantra, single posture would be good, single mastery of the limbs of yoga, and so forth. That's singular. That's the best stance to take, but the mind has to remain open in that one stance. Can I take a stance and keep my mind open? I should be able to, because I can sit my body down and think of different things, can't I? So philosophically, I should be able to take a stance in an ideal that I accept to be absolute and still keep my mind open. That's Sarvadarshana Charya. So you can see how this is going in, and last week I was taking them apart a little bit, but this is an order in which you follow after you realize that there is a freedom that you're here to attain that's beyond everything that binds you and causes you suffering. So the next thing would be Brahmanusandana. Remember what we said about that? When you have this ideal in your mind's eye and in your heart, you can consider it, think about it, search for it, inquire into it, reason about it, investigate it, and explore everything about it, like the scriptures, for instance. That's what's called Brahmanusandana. And then it ends up in Brahmabhyasa. So Brahmabhyasa is, now I have everything I need to meditate. That's what's coming up soon here. We're going to look at Vipassana meditation and Upasana practice. I'll show you that chart. So if I have the permission now and the qualification of meditating, reflecting, and conversing and discussing with my teacher and with my Sangha, all the truths about Brahman, like we did yesterday, right, at 11 a.m. in Hawaii time when we had a few people together and we all talked about the God blogs. 5 of them last week were put out. We all conversed about them very deeply. That's what we mean about this. If you can talk about God, you can talk about the world. And sometimes you talk about God. What people say about God is going to be based upon what little they know. But when you go to a person who has majored in spirituality in the College of Consciousness, you might say, they're going to have a lot to say about Brahman that you've never heard. And you want to be party to that. So this is how the aspiring student comes to it, knows that there's a great ideal to be, a great freedom to be had, and moves through all of the levels of that. Off to the side here, as they do, pragyana gana, pragyana gana. Gana means a mass. So pragyana is like the highest consciousness. So you realize that what you're talking about here is not able to be fully described by the mind and its thoughts and the mouth and its words. That it's an indeterminable mass of pure conscious awareness. And so that throws you into this samadhi of higher awareness. That's why people go silent, like Buddha did for so many days under the Bo tree. If you have a vision of that, based on knowing that it exists, as Buddha did when he went searching for it after he left the castle, right, of his father, Sakya clan. Same with Ram after he left the castle of uh, uh, his father Dasarasa and went searching for it. You see, found it. So there's a great ideal that you're searching for, and all of a sudden it comes to you in the terms of this boundless, birthless, deathless, timeless awareness that's at the foundation of everything, and that does not change. You can look at that over a long period of time and it will remain the same while everything else around it changes and passes. And off to the right is Upasana Jan. So I think in the order to which to take it, I think I'm changed my mind here. I want to show you the new Upasana chants, since we have that coming up. But actually, changing my mind again. We'll come back to that. Let's go on with the chart we took when we left off with yesterday. We'll come naturally to Upasana Jan here because it's one of the great bolts of lightning that you see there, which this divine couple you see below, who are aspirants, are putting their heads together. And that's Samara Sattva, the union of Shiva and Shakti. That's the ideal of the aspiring householder, I said last week. The ideal of the monk is they're going to go single. It's a solo path, right? So their Samara Sattva is happening inside between them and their ideal, like between Jivatman and Paramatman, or between the aspiring aspirant and the Ishtam, right? So everyone has an ideal. So outside you see with the householders, they must be availed of this consecrated partnership that our founder Lex Sixon used to talk about it. If you can get that, which is actually kind of hard to do in this day and age because of people having such different chemistries, if you want to put it that way. It's hard to bring them together for any length of time to do a practice that will unite them in this reality. So that union of Shiva and Shakti is a great ideal, particularly for the householder aspirant. So you can see them sitting together there. Now, how far did we get last week? We started to go through this list below that these are practices that they're considering from their guru. See, so they've gotten on a path, say it's Tantra, or say it's Vedanta, or say it's eight-limbed yoga. These two have gotten on a path. Any of those darshanas, Sarva Darshanachara, right? We looked at that. Any of these darshanas is a good one to commit to and begin the practice. It's not like dating. That dating gurus and philosophies and methods. You have to choose one now, and it's time to step up and not only choose it, but dive into the practice. That's why I chanted from Patanjali to start out, from the Patanjali darshanas, that abhyasam, constancy, constant practice, and vairagyam, uh, discernment and detachment. When you put those together, that will help you reach the goal. So that kind of discernment and that kind of practice have come together in the Shiva and Shakti couple we're talking about. And they've received some practices here. We'll go through them again quickly. Dharana Shakti means they've attained the ability to grasp what the Guru has told them. You see, they're grasping, they're getting not just an inkling of maybe truth, but they're having it spoken to them, and they're stepping up and they're hearing it. That's Shravana, right? Or Shruti, we know. One of the three great proofs of truth is to hear the truth from an illumined preceptor. Now Vichara Shakti comes next. That's the power to inquire. So if you have the power of retaining what the Guru has said, then you question. Questions come up when you approach the ideal. Like you see the light. What is that? That's a question. Or you see the self. Who is that? That's a question. So they're basically, who am I? And what is reality? And all of these questions in various forms will come up in the audience of Guru Shishya, or in the Guru Dharma Sangha triple gem. That'll all come up naturally. That's what's called Vichara Shakti, and they have this. They want to inquire about what they heard. Not too hard to follow, right? I'm giving you the Sanskrit words because that's the source of all of this. Back in the ancient Sanskrit, those illumined souls practiced these, realized them, and passed them on to us. Now we have no excuses, really, but to engage in practices that have been tested over time by many couples who have proven themselves to be the union of Shiva and Shakti, and have reached the goal of Jivan Mukta, that is, living liberated souls. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that, right? There are many hidden householders amongst my devotees, he would say. Householder, realized souls. So those are there. Then Vedana Shakti, we mentioned it, they have to expand their mind's power of cognition, right? So Om apyayantu mamangani vak pranaschakshu shrotra matra balamindriyani cha sarvani. Those of you watching probably have that by memory. It's one of the 6 peace chants. So apyayantu mamangani vak, manas, mind and speech, right? May my mind expand in its capacity to know Brahman and understand the words that the teacher is telling me, vak. And then, therefore, in order to do that, may my life force, pranaschakshu, my life force and the power to see, expand in their ability to know Brahman. And also, may my body have experienced great health, so I don't have sickness and illness and various things, which actually, remember, come from the mind, not from outside germs and all that. Those are secondary. The real illness is in the mind, and susceptibility to outer influences. But you can keep those at bay if your mind is healthy and focused on reality, instead of fear of getting sick, or actually falling ill because you don't have that resilience that's being talked about here. So basically, this is what's called Vedana Shakti. Basically, the power of cognition. I mean, all my abilities expand in the power to know Brahman. So you can see how these 3 have captivated them already. To hear it, to contemplate it, but on the way to expand the ability to cognize what it means, and hold it, retaining, right? We use that word on the way here as we, in our drive today to the spiritual center here. Retaining is very important. We're trying to teach the young kids here in Hawaii, for instance, to retain what they hear from their teachers. And then Jati Smara. Jati Smara means I recall that I've been here before. I've had births before. I'm not a one and done kind of person. Actually, that could be a good thing. If you call it bodhisattva or jivan mukta, you come once, get your enlightenment, and never embody again is one of the high ideals. Very much in akin with Svatantra Sattva Bhava and so forth. Um, so, but otherwise, if I'm not there yet, if I'm not there at that realization of that I need to have in one of my births, then I want to do this practice of recall so that what's being taught in school and in families and in conventional religion doesn't deter me from the fact that I do have many lifetimes behind me, and that's what made me into who I am today. So that could be a proper conclusion that we're going to look at lakshana, but that tattva lakshana is maybe being deterred by that, saying, oh, science is telling me I only live once, and if I have to go to the zoo to see the monkeys, to see my ancestors, as my teacher used to say, I don't accept that. See, and I accept only jivan mukta, that my soul is free and liberated at all times. I had an inkling of that once, right? Back in my early spiritual practice, I had an inkling that I was free, and all of this that I was about to do had been done before, and I hadn't quite reached the right conclusion about it. You see where I'm going with this? It's all in a line there, and it's being supported by different teachings your guru's giving you. So jati shmara, remember shmara, jati, your birth. And it can apply to one lifetime. If I remember that I was born in this lifetime, that was an act I undertook. That's a great thing. Most people, it's just by chance they were born here. And when they're born, they're the body. And when they're born, they have no connection to anything other than the body, the senses, and lower knowledge as they go along the path of life. So jati shmar is a very powerful word. I remember that I was born. See. That'll come in very handy later when you realize that nothing's ever born and nothing ever dies. There's some really wonderful contradictions that happen to you in spiritual life that are meant to blow open your conventional mind and conventional way of thinking. But for now, these beings are trying to achieve something, or achieve the union of male and female energies. Achieve Shiva and Shakti coming together from the base of the spine to the crown of the head, where they will be in constant union with one another. Achieve that kind of divine coupling that will balance all energies and open up all the centers up to the third eye, and open up all the lokas and take the soul to a timeless, birthless, deathless state, which is its nature. Then you have Hamsa Yoga. Hamsa Yoga is a teaching that Krishna gave to the Yadava clan early before the Gita, in the Mahabharata, actually, because they had doubts about the nature of reality. And now, if that was happening in the Dwapara Yuga, doubts were coming in. You can see how much more a problem it is here, is that people are doubting the very existence of God. Number one, they're doubting that they even have a divine self. And that doubt can extend over into philosophy too. Basically, there are some schools that don't like the word self. Anatta, there's no self, so they'll talk about that. But that really, for us, refers to the ego self. That is like an onion with peelings. There's no center to it. It just keeps peeling it and causing you to cry, as we used to say. But there is an indivisible, all-pervasive self, if you want to call it that, called Atman, or Buddha nature, if you want to go to it in Buddhism. So in that way, there are doubts that are coming along in every age. So this was taught, Hamsa Yoga was taught long ago by Krishna. Now it's being brought back by your teacher in front of you and saying, what you need to do here is remove these certain doubts. And we'll look at that in terms of these conclusions that people are making, even in spiritual life, that are not healthy ones. You have to go to the highest goal and brook no imitations and keep keep it, as we said earlier, the atmosphere of love and devotion has to be there as you do this long-term practice. If one thing starts to subside or desert you, if you're not able to keep that up, then that's going to be the broken leg of the four-legged chair. It's going to sit on it, it's going to tilt. You need all four of these yogas to be steady and strong for you. Atmabhava is another thing that's said here. It's actually the feeling I'm the Atman. Is, if you want to do it, put it that way. Feeling's not a very good word, but if there's a feeling that's not so healthy, and maybe weak, there's also feelings that are strong. So this is a very positive inclination that I am Atma Brahma. It's how they put it in the Mahavakyas. Ayam Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. That begins to become more and more pronounced as you draw near to Brahman. What's draw near mean? Upasana. Asana is sitting near Upa. Asana that sits near the guru, sits near God. And it gets that radiation, like standing in the sun warms you up. And so then there's Svajati, Svadatya Vritti Prabhava, it's called. And basically what it is a practice that drives away all negativities and increases positivities, if you want to put it in a teaching. It also refers to Shravana, Shravana and Manana and Nidijasana. That's also Svajatiya Vritti Prabhava. It's like the three proofs of truth as a word. It's actually a Advaita Vedanta method to hear, to roll it over in your mind, to realize, gets rid of all doubts and fears. So it gets rid of all the negativities, but it shows all the positivities in its place. So it's a more complete version of Neti Neti. What's a more complete version of Neti Neti? Iti iti. What's more complete than not this is all this, all this. So this is how things move in spiritual life for these two who are beginning to remove doubts. And when a doubt's removed, a light comes forward. They're beginning to transcend ignorance. When that ignorance is dissolved, knowledge comes. So it's just the veiling power getting exposed to the light. All of these are that. The light which is already your own light, right? So that's why there is a self. That's why you have a feeling there's a self, because that light is yourself. Nobody can not feel it if they come close to God, Upasana. And let's look at that soon. So the top, I already read it last week and I chanted it just now for you, so I don't need to repeat it. But here we started to look at these various, I put them in 5, and that's how we ended the last class, is that basically there's these 5 samskaras. You see them there like little clouds in the mind. They're problems that are impressions that have been left in the mind by past lifetimes. So Jatishmara, if you don't realize it or practice it or believe in it, then when these things come to you, you don't have any basis to define them, what to speak of destroy them. I say, where did that come from? Oh, out of nowhere. Like, sorry, I can't accept that. Oh, where did that come from? From some scars in your past life. Oh, okay, I think I can think about that. You see, it gives you something to think about. So there's some basis for the way people think the way they do, the way they act the way they do, or the way they don't act and don't think, as the case may be, in both positive and negative ways. You can not think in a good way, but you can not think in a bad way, right? So same with actions and all. So this is why they put these in place, and then they tell you, be ready for light to appear inside of yourself, right? That's why you had an inkling all the time. Be ready for light to appear inside of yourself when you remove these doubts and fears and you take away this ignorance and you transcend suffering. Those 3 or 4 things that both Buddhism and Vedanta are always at as the problems. So you can put it in 5 ways here. Attachment to nature with no awareness of who you are. That's just like children playing. They haven't grown up yet, right? And so they don't know who they are. I mean, that's proof right there that when you grow up, you still don't know who you are. If you don't engender this higher consciousness that tells you who you are. Find people who have found out who they are and can then tell you who you are. I and my Father are one kind of teaching. You are that kind of teaching. So nature stands in the way of that, just like immaturity stands in the way of the child in his mind. So this has to be overcome. That's a samskara in people's mind. It's like a collective samskara. Everyone believes only nature exists, and they don't believe in the soul or the self. If they do believe, it's just belief, and it's not faith yet. And that comes another level of problem. If they have faith, then it's not realization yet. So belief must become faith and tested by faith, and faith must become transcended so you can realize yourself. Belief, faith, realization has to go in that way. The first 2 are inadequate to the task of liberation. Second, samskara. People therefore get caught in cycles of rebirth with family and ancestors. Talk about Lord Buddha. One of the main things was talking about the Pitriloka and its grasp upon people's minds, ritualism and so forth in India. And then at the same time, he talked about the Kala Chakra, the wheel of birth and death that was thousands and millions of souls were constantly going around. So this is what you get when you think that Prakriti is the only reality and there's no Purusha. Right? But all the teachers from way back to Samkhya, Lord Kapila said, here's the truth. Purusha, Prakriti. Purusha is the conscious soul. Prakriti is the insentient nature that comes out of it. They didn't leave either of the 2 out. So why are you thinking only about insentient nature and not thinking about the conscious soul, your Purusha, your Atman, your true nature, your Buddha nature, the soul with a capital S, pure conscious awareness, timeless and deathless? That has to be put into the picture and not taken out. The third, and that's a samskara in people's minds, collective consciousness, all the way to the ancestors, who are still living, by the way, just in another level of existence inside of this mental spine I was talking about. They've gone back there, like you go there in a dream. Then the third one is unresolved karmas from past lifetimes. Of course, that's a great study. Look into Sri Ram and Sri Krishna's teachings on the 3 or 4 different kinds of karmas. And you'll find out that these are persisting. And remember, these 2 are looking at these because the teacher's saying, I've armed you with this. I've told you about this. Now look at what you need to attack. And this is the practice of Samara Sattva right here. Becoming aware of the impediments, not making false conclusions about them. I'll get to that. I swear I'll get to that very soon. Then the 4th one is strong desire for wealth, lands, fame, and power. And then finally, obsessed with animalistic existence via sensual pleasures and objects. And these are the 5-fold critical list of all true, authentic religious traditions. They'll mention these in most all of them. But India will concentrate on these 2 as being the main problem. No consciousness about Purusha, but all concentration on nature, Prakriti, and as a result, getting caught in the cycles of birth and death in nature. Those 2 are not brought out much in other traditions because you can go to heaven or you can go to paradise. But here you go to rebirth. And that's not heaven or paradise. That's a round of births and deaths that great souls like the Buddha wanted to let you know about. Now look at the practices that they can use, lightning bolts, right? That these since they have uh, vichara shakti, and the guru tells them about these, and they say, well, how can I get rid of those? That's the power of inquiry. Give me the practice, give me the method. And so here's one, pratipaksha bhavanam. Every time something happens to you two in the world that puts you off, that disturbs your equilibrium, that causes you to react unduly, raise an opposite wave. Make that a practice in your mind. It's not it's not a new teaching. It's in Christianity, for instance, where there's hatred, let me sow love, and so forth. But this is going to be more than a moral practice. This is going to be entered into as a practice that destroys these samskaras, not just sentimentally lets them exist while you yourself have some sort of distance from them temporarily. See, these will destroy samskaras in the mind, these practices, like lightning bolts. You have to do it consciously with your consecrated partner. And remember that consecrated partner for you, if you're single, or if you're a monk, for instance, is that union inside of you with the Ishtam. There's a lot to be said about that. And then Manana Shakti, if you put Manana Shakti together with Dharana Shakti and Vichara Shakti and Vedana Shakti, then you've got a lot of power. You've got 4 kinds of Shaktis, powers there. And there are more than that, too, that we know of listed in Tantra. Basically, this then will help you to not only raise an opposite wave, but do so by maintaining concentration. It's very important. Concentration is the key in the 8-limb yoga too. It's called dharana. So you can go so far as to encounter the mind's restlessness and its laziness, but to penetrate through that, to get concentration, puts you beyond the 5th limb called pratyahara into the 6th limb called dharana, concentration. So that's a power of concentration. Use that as a lightning bolt to zap that whenever it rises in your mind. I mean, you have to actually sit, close your mind and see that problem and concentrate on it. You can't just hear the teaching that the Guru's giving you and walk away. Okay, I hope that'll happen. This is an active, hands-on kind of practice you do in your meditation. And you concentrate in on the problem and on the solution, and you, with your insight, with these practices that have been given to you, destroy that samskara. And destroy it means what? I might have to do this not just once in the morning of one meditation. Didn't I say it has to be done? This practice has to be maintained over a long, long time in an atmosphere of faith and love and devotion. Father of Yoga is telling you. So you have to do that every day until it goes away. And if you have to watch it, then if it starts to creep back on you, oh, I better zap it again with this power of Manana Shakti. Then the third one is Upakrama, Upasamhara, Evavakya. Unity, constancy of thought from start to conclusion. I had to put several Sanskrit words together there, but it is listed this way in the Vedanta. So basically, they want you to come to a definite conclusion, and that's where you could segue here to Tataksha Lakshana chart that I wanted to show you about these false conclusions that people are letting to live in their mind. You have to kick them out. There's, if a false conclusion comes to you by the power of your own introspection and the power of the words of the seers, you have to hang a no vacancy sign on the door of your mind. See, you cannot enter. Sorry, there's no room for you. See, and if it's already in you, then you have to kick it out and keep the door shut on it, to use simple ways of explaining. So importantly, though, this conclusion can't, again, just be had once. Oh, I believe you, sir. I'm going to practice that. But you have to make this conclusion from start to beginning. That's the most important part of this particular practice, is that you have to start out on a positive note. You can't start out saying, oh, that's been a problem in my mind forever. I'll never get rid of it. You can't start out that way. You have to say, that's unreal. That doesn't exist. My Atman is real. Brahman's real. That exists. And then this conclusion can be brought to bear on the problem, and it can persist without this doubt undermining it later in your mind. Doubts and fears and ignorance are the three ingredients of the curtain of nescience that's in the human mind. And they pass through that every time they're born and die. They pass through that curtain of nescience. So they erases their jatish tomorrow when they pass into death and are reborn, if they don't have these kinds of staying power, right? I made a conclusion in this lifetime that I'm Atman, and I'm nothing other but Atman. Nothing else exists but the Atman. And I go to my passing of the body with that in mind, and I come back into a new body, if I should do so consciously, with that in my mind. So it doesn't take great seers long, like 8 years for Shankara, to waken up everything he knew from his past lifetimes. At 8 years of old, he could recall all the teachings that he had been given in other illumined lifetimes he lived. So this is where all of these need to keep being connected, right? So think about that. From this moment on, I have a conclusion. That's the beginning of my new thought. I have to keep it constant now. It's a very beautiful practice because you can apply that one to all the rest of these in the circle here. And if that's not there, it's going to undermine them, because you're letting them go without that basis. You see, for instance, mantra Chaitanya, there's a dormant power in the mantra. So you can't just get a mantra from the teacher, go away and repeat it like a parrot. We know that. But you also have to know the meaning of each word of the mantra and who the mantra is dedicated to. That is, what deity the mantra is connecting you to. So Holy Mother, for instance, right? She said, oh, Sri Ramakrishna, in the early days, he taught me all the mantras to all the deities and how to connect them, right? Beautiful. So he sat her down one time, talk about Shiva and Shakti couples. And he sat her down one time and said, do you know this mantra for the Vaishnavas? Do you know this mantra for Ganapati? Do you know this mantra for Kali? Do you know this mantra for... And do you know who the deity is and how to connect them? So talk about the couple of the divine couple of the age. Sita and Rama has come again. Radha and Krishna has come again. Sharad and Ramakrishna are here. And that's a divine ideal for the householders, isn't it? Is it just for monks because the Ramakrishna order has this powerful monastic order? But look at what the lay disciples have been able to do and what they've been bequeathed, right? To get free, become jivan muktas in their own rights. So this needs to be activated in us. And that's a good segue from there to mantra. Basically, that from beginning to end, when the teacher gives you the mantra, you have to say, I'm free. I'm not doing this practice to get free. I'm already free. You know who told me that when I got my mantra from Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj was Lex Hickson, the founder of SRV. He came up to me and he said, the next day after my initiation, which was on Holy Mother's birthday, we got it together, Shiva and Shakti that we are. We got that mantra from him. He came up the next day, do you realize what happened to you just yesterday? You got initiated by the last living initiated disciple of Holy Mother. So, you're free now. Be free. So that mantra, Chaitanya means consciousness. I got the mantra for consciousness itself, for Brahman itself. So I have the words that I can say to the Lord now. And I can say that to the Lord of Death, Yama, when I leave the body. Stand aside, sir, respectfully. Here's my mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, or whatever it is. See, Om Tari Tut Tari Turi Swaha. And then that force stands behind, and you meet the deity from which you have been talking to for the past 60 to 90 years of your lifetime, depending on how soon you got the mantra from your guru. The sooner the better. But it has to go from conclusion to finality. It's another way where you connect it back to this beautiful teaching of upakrama. All right, so next, conscious dissolution of daily occurrences into deep sleep. If you've heard this from your guru, then you're probably one of the rare few, or a few of the rare few, that know that waking, dreaming, and deep sleep are the A, U, and M of Om. And that there are three states of your consciousness that your soul goes into and moves through every night, every 24 hours. And they're much like the in-breath, the held breath, and the out-breath. They're much like birth, life, and death. They're much like other triputis. But if you've heard this kind of teaching, then you know that here's a method which non-dualists use to render their dreams lucid, if you want to use that term nowadays. It was big back in the 80s and 90s when books were coming out. And I'd like to repeat it too. People have asked me, how do you make your dreams lucid back then? Because of books about it. And I said, render your waking state lucid. Because you can't have a lucid you until you have a lucid A. You see? A is Om, A of Om. That's the beginning. That's Lord Brahma, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, right? So appease, placate, propitiate Lord Brahma first. And then he'll give you permission. Oh, okay, you can master A. You've got everything you need here on the physical earth in your body, and no impediments anyway. You've got all you need, and you've been given everything that you need. Now go into the next inner state, the dreaming state, heaven, as it were, and then use the you and master that. Master your mind is what that is. And then you can get to deep sleep. Nitya pralaya. Everything goes into pralaya, not just at the end of a yuga, which is hundreds and thousands of years long, before everything comes back again, but at the end of every 24-hour period, everyone goes into pralaya. It's called deep sleep. And then they come forth out of that into waking through dreams, or sometimes a vision happens in there too. I like to call that one of the states of consciousness, is you have a visionary dream sometimes between deep sleep and dreaming. But you have to remember these, jati, smara, right? And you have to conclude about them, right? And keep that conclusion from beginning to end. Oh, I once had a dream that I was saved by a boatman, and they took me to a far distant island, and I'll never forget that. That's a beginning to end conclusion that you make. And so to give this chart, a half a class or 2/3 of a class rendering that it deserves, I'm going through these fairly fast, but we'll take parts of them apart today and next Sunday, because this is where we come to, well, let's do the bottom one first. Subhavasana, pure desire and good mental impressions. These are not very positive mental impressions. They're mixed impressions. I mean, Prakriti, it's beautiful, and you can go into it and eat fruit from trees and swim in lakes and go to the beach and sun yourself. That's life in Prakriti, right? And everyone's doing it. Embodied beings are doing that. So it's a mixed sort of samskar in your mind. You go through a whole lifetime of that kind of enjoyment, which is back to this problem, essential pleasures and objects, and this problem, desire for wealth, lands, fame, and power. Where do you think those come from, if not from nature? From living a life in nature that's acquiescent, that's weak, that's not directed, that's risking all of these problems that come forward and these wrong conclusions that we'll look at next. So that's Shubhavasana. So you see that this word is very powerful. And these two want to have a pure mind and good mental impressions. That's why they are throwing bolts of Shakti power, lightning, at these to weaken them, maybe to eventually dissolve them. We've heard about the dissolution of the mind stream practice in SRV and in other traditions. And that's another version of this, or what happens along that path of dissolution of everything back to the source. Involution, it's called. And then we get to Upasana here. So sitting near to God in meditation. This is always given. I mean, these others, you might say, wow, the Guru told me those, and I couldn't believe how many methods, how many things he wants us to do every day. It's called an intense spiritual practice, by the way. Intense is the key word there. It's not just a loose, it's not a conventional religious practice. It's not just a once a day prayer or blessing your food once a day at dinner. It's got all these elements to that I must participate in and intensify in order to have a true spiritual life dawn upon myself in this lifetime. And then I can get back to the very beginning where I realized there was a freedom somewhere. Now I've found it, right? And I have representatives for it, right? Tomorrow's Lakshmi Puja. Yeah. So, Namaste astu Mahamayi Sripite Surapujite Shankar Chakra Gadahaste Mahalakshmi Namostute. So we chant the mantra to Mother Lakshmi, as we've been doing for years and years and years. Tomorrow will be a beautiful puja here for her in our shrine. So this is what you keep up your consciousness in all the time, constantly, over years, to make this practice fructify in you. Because we just said you have to keep this practice up for a long time in the atmosphere of devotion and faith. Father of yoga told you that. So that yoga practice must be done in that atmosphere. That atmosphere has to be rekindled all the time. Let's see. And that's a good way to segue out of this chart for now, is this final quote. In a remote place, assume a simple posture with a straight spine. Adopt the attitude of a free soul. That's important. That's that early conclusion. Bring your senses under control and salute your guru with reverence. Then meditate deeply on the refulgent, sorrowless self within you. That's Kaivalya Upanishad. What's Kaivalya mean? Freedom from nature. I separate myself from name and form. And then I see I'm a nameless, formless entity. I can go back to nature lately because I found out nature was inside of me. Name and form was in me. I made it happen out there later. And then I had association with it and I formed some karmas, and now I've forgotten that I made it happen. Now I have to get back to that old feeling again that I was once free, right? You see how the whole thing is connected inwardly. So let's look at Upasana so I get to fulfill my promise about sitting near to God. And it's, of course, nowadays it's very much associated or connected to, I think, with Vipassana. The two words, of course, are so very much alike. So here's the new chart that was just fresh off the presses, as they say. And I've titled it The Intentional Natural Complement of Upasana and Vipassana. Sorry for being so specific, but there are different religions, there are different philosophies, there are different interpretations of religion and philosophy, and there are different natures in people that adapt a certain practice and think that it's superior to another practice, and so forth and so on. But India, Buddhism came out of India. That's where it had its origin. Lord Buddha was a Hindu man. And just like Jesus was Middle Eastern, not Western. So we go to the roots of all Indian practices, and we'll see that there was never a distinction or a separation meant to be made between Upasana and Vipassana, between sitting near to the form of God and then getting permission, as it were, to pass into the formless reality. God is with form and God is beyond form, and God is beyond both form and formlessness as well, to quote Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who is both an avatar of the Kali Yuga and a divine coupling that we just saw with Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi. So that's what I can say first out about Upasana and Vipassana. Don't put them separate. These are Indian practices. These are practices came out of India, and they've been there all along. Um, so again, Upasana, sitting near to God, and then Vipassana, passing beyond the realm of name and form. But both of them can be given a less enlightened definition too, and have been. Whereas Upasana becomes, oh, I'm limited to ritual, and Vipassana becomes, oh, I'm limited to breathing and feelings. That's just the beginnings of Upasana and Vipassana. We have to take these to a deeper and higher way. Isn't that what they've been asked to do, right? Take them to a deeper and higher way through these methodologies that are time-tested and have turned souls into realized beings, seers, saints, sages, and so forth. Let's take, basically Upasana, if we want to go back to its closest representative, would be Shankara. He says, like an unbroken flow of pure oil from one vessel to another, Upasana consists of a continual focus of concentrated and elevated thought on some deity or principle of divine nature. So here's Shankara's definition of Upasana. So, of course, Upasana goes way back before 700 AD, when he lived. But that's a very good nearest definition we can get out of the scriptures by Adi Shankaracharya. So he's citing there, of course, what's called Taila Darajan, which I've introduced to us, 30 years ago when we started into some of this practice. Pouring of one oil from vessel to another vessel, it doesn't break. It's like a rainbow arc. It doesn't even splash if you do it right. It's just one flow. So you're one vessel. Oil is that consciousness in your mind, in your meditation. You want to pour that into the next vessel, but what has to happen? Can you pour it from far away? Is it going to make it to the other vessel? You have to come near, right? Upasana. So that's what you have to do. Coming near to these, we know what it means to the Shiva Shakti couple now. Wow, we have to get close to these practices. We have to get close to our guru. We have to get close to Ishvara with the mantra. We have to get close to Brahman, dissolve ourselves in Brahman. And maybe come back out and reform ourselves like Ishvara Kotis can do. This is a tall order. So there's Upasana represented in a quote. Here's Lord Buddha. Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. This core principle aligns with the goal of Vipassana, to be fully present with one's experience. So you can see the flavor is different between Shankara and Buddha, between Upasana and Vipassana. You already feel with Vipassana, that is that by coming closer to divine reality, whatever it's called, you're coming closer to yourself. It's your own experience that's going to bring that about. Sounds a lot like Sri Ramakrishna, doesn't it? Direct spiritual experience just obliterates the distinction between nature and soul, between creature and creator, between God and mankind. It obliterates the division between those. And that's what it's supposed to do. So maybe it'll start out with some breathing. Doesn't yoga also start out with some breathing? And then it'll progress to, I have to feel this with my mind instead of just my body. So it'll go beyond feeling the body, because the body's not a lot to feel. There's a lot of suffering there and there's a lot of pleasure there. And that can be a problem, as we've seen, attachment to nature and the body and pleasures. So now I'm going deeper into this mental spine that I just coined earlier. It's that those chakras, those levels of being are within me. Kings of heaven are within you. Now I'm going in there and having my direct experience of them. And if I do that in the right way, according to the teachings of the scriptures and the words of the guru, then I will have a return to the oneness of myself, which I always intuited. When I was first born, I felt that oneness with God. So two beautiful quotes to kick off Upasana and Vipassana. Now I'm putting it in a deeper level when I say one is worship of divine forms and the other is meditation on formless reality. Worship of divine forms is Upasana, and then it should lead naturally to meditation on formless reality. And it can also come back in that arc to meditation of with God with forms. It's sort of like you, if you're going into meditation and you have the abilities of a Sri Ramakrishna, then all of a sudden the world goes away, the senses shut off, and you do this at night in deep sleep too. But he's doing it consciously in meditation. Everything shuts down, breath too is arrested. And all of a sudden he has got nothing in the way to have communion with this light of Brahman inside of him, which is the core of everything. Then he sports in that, he says, like a fish let loose from a goldfish bone. He sports in that light, and then he hears the call of the world again, and maybe somebody's standing by his bed, worshiping the mantra into his ears. I mean, whispering the mantra into his ears, because he got so deep in sometimes in meditation during sleep that Holy Mother would be scared that he would not come back. So she'd sometimes wake up the whole temple compound and have Frede come and say the mantra into his ears, so he would all of a sudden wake up. So you're in this ocean of light, you hear the names of God. Now it's time to leave the realm of Brahman and come back to the realm of Ishvara through the gods, through the ancestors, just like you did when you were born. You came through all of them from your Atman, down the chakras, took on a body on earth, and became a physical being, as it were. That's all empowered by how many different kinds of Shaktis are involved in that process of you being taking on a body and having senses and being able to see, hear, touch, and smell and so forth. All those energies combined in you. You're definitely on a mission from God, but maybe on a mission from Goddess. So let's, because we want to accomplish this chart, next week we'll get to Tataksha Lakshana, these bad conclusions. Probably a good order that's happening here naturally, because those false conclusions can come to people even at a rather advanced state of their spiritual practice. They're called adepts. They're not called masters yet. So the masters have freed themselves from all doubts about this matter. They've had the direct spiritual experience, but the adepts are still courting it and having an experience and falling back from it, having another experience later and falling back from it, and that's very good. Krama Mukti style, they call that. So let's look at three different types of Upasana. It's called Pratiko Upasana, meditation on an article or symbol. So a lot of people will take up an image, or even a candle in a windowless place has been used, that kind of thing. Or a tiny stone Ram or Buddha, depending on your tradition. That's a pratika, it's called. And also called pratima. So it's a good way to start into things. It doesn't have anything to do with the downside of idol worship or image worship. It has everything to do with concentrating your mind. So one Swami once told me, um, Babaji, mantras, we know about them, but if you just say Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola over and over again, that'll be good. So I realized later as meant is that you can say your mantra 100,000 times with a scattered mind. But if you say one word that focuses your mind for one moment, that's great. And Holy Mother used to take that tack too. She's, just repetition of mantra 108 times is going to give you so much benefit from that concentrated mind as if you did 1,008, over the day without that concentration, would give you very little benefit. So that's that power of concentration that's in Dharana Shakti, for instance, and so forth. Pratikopasana, then Namopasana, utilization of sound as one's focus for meditation. We know about that a lot because we have gotten mantras. We do chant the names of the Lord. We do sing stotrams, and both dual and non-dual stotrams and bhajans. And we do chant Nom. So the power of sound, that's that path of Nada Brahma, it's called. Nada Brahma. It's the path of God to God with sound. And some people are more visionary oriented, that's true, but some people are more sound oriented. So that's where Namopasana comes in as one of these ways of coming near God. Is remember the meaning of the word, right? To come near. So basically that's what you're doing here, only this way you're doing it through a symbol that makes you think about the thing that's most desirous to you. I love Ram. I'll put a baby Ram there, or I'll put a little statue of Ram or Sita in Ram, and I'll just look at that and become entirely taken up with it, you see. Like Gopala. Gopala mom had a little Gopala statue. She looked at that for years and years until it finally became alive for her. And then it ran away one day and led her to Sri Ramakrishna. So this was all happening in her mind, yes, but in a very good way. It's happening in a good, pure mind, in other words. That's the last thing we looked at here, right? Is that importance of Shubhavashana, having pure mind. And then there's ahamgraho pasana, taking the unchanging self and its oneness with non-dual awareness as one's focus. So this is, of course, coming closer to the point. So pratika first, then namo, sound, and then the self, right? So you're working your way in by three stages, um, three different kinds of coming near to Brahman, Upasana, to sit near to Brahman. So actually, for all three of those, you're sitting probably. And you're sitting to chant, you're sitting to meditate, you're sitting to worship. So all of this takes that word upasana and gives it a much more dimensional, beneficial level of benefit to you. That's in the scriptures, three different kinds of upasanas. So I thought that would be good to bring out here to flesh out that teaching. Let's look at Vipassana quickly then. Four stages of it are refinement. They use watching the breath to help focus your concentration. And of course, that's pranayama in yoga, the fourth limb. I'm sorry, yeah. So yama, niyama, 1, 2, and then asana, 3, and then pranayama, 4. So with here in this practice with Vipassana, you'll probably pretty much like the Upanishads sometimes tell you to do, let's just jump to this watching of the breath. It's a very good jump to make if you can do it. It probably if you're not so body attached or oriented, then you can do this. Hopefully all the yamas and yamas have already been satisfied in you. You're truthful, you're nonviolent, you've studied the scriptures, you love God. I mean, all of these things should be there in any spiritually oriented living being. If they're not there, then got some work to do with someone else other than a guru. So that's refinement. That's how to refine the mind's thinking process is through the breath. It's better to have the mind together and then the breathing happens second. That has to be said. But this is the way people usually come to a practice. I breathe and then I wake up more. Not my body wakes up too, and that's good because now I see that there's things happening in my body I wasn't aware of before. I can bring consciousness to my body now. That's good, but not attachment to the body. You can't stay there. Same with the mind. When you discover the mind, you discover that it's dual by nature. It is good and bad are in it, along with mixed. And it's not a place that you want to stay with very long. To purify it is to give it knowledge, higher knowledge. To not work on it, leave it unripe, would be to give it only lower knowledge, because that doesn't satisfy in the end, as Vivekananda says. So refinement, then observation. The Vipassana proceeds with that. with a well-quieted mind, feelings, emotions, and sensations then will get properly examined. You know how people usually examine feelings and sensations with reaction. So Vipassana is one of the great Buddhist teachings about, and Zen too, about non-reactivity. We hear about it a lot. Ashoba, it's called. You don't want to react to every little thing, particularly with your emotions. And here's back to what I was saying earlier. If you believe that the world is permanent and you haven't accepted anicca, that the world is not permanent, then you're going to react to things. If things happen in the world that don't that disrupt your life and which makes you unhappy or makes you grieve or makes you shocked or makes you mad or angry, then that's reactivity. And that has to be one of these practices that you're going to want to zap with these methods that you're being given. So you understand what I'm saying? That's in Vedanta, that equates to the world is real, right? But what the opposite of that is, the world is not real. Brahman is real. Brahman Satya Jagad Mithya. Mithya means false. So Brahman is real. I should keep my mind on reality. And if I take it off of Brahman and put it in the world, I run the risk of forgetting Brahman and then considering the world to be real. People, this Jatishmara, the lack of it, you call it ajatishmara. People are coming back again and again, not knowing their past lifetimes. Sri Ramakrishna said that's because they were born into so many lifetimes where they thought the world was real and they didn't know Brahman. They didn't know themselves, their Atman. And so they got a habit, samskara in their mind of thinking the world's real. I have to go back to it. The world's real. I have to go back to it. The world's real. They never had a thought, Brahman is real. And Brahman is the only reality. The world comes from it. It doesn't come from the world. And we refuse to say that. You're never born in nature. Nature is born out of you. So take these in order, please. Refine the mind first means get your breathing together, even your breathing out in yoga. Puraka, Kumbhaka, Rechaka, and Kumbhaka again. And then you have this mind clears up when you do your breathing right. You can do this simple practice in an advanced stage. If you have a bad day, sit down and breathe. It doesn't matter how adept you are, how far along. It'll help you. You don't have to be proud about, oh, I'm going to realize so I don't do pranayama anymore. I would say that you don't need to do asana anymore once you've mastered your position. But pranayama, prana, that's very connected to Shakti. Shakti and prana are so much connected to each other. So if you lose your connection with her, breathe and she'll show you, oh, you can connect to me again through your breathing. And I'll show you some deeper things when you stop breathing. Like in deep sleep, you stop breathing. In meditation, you stop breathing. In samadhi, you stop breathing. At death, you stop breathing. Those are 4 times in which the breath deserts you, as it were. And all 4 of them, it can come back again. You can come out of death and breathe again in a new body. So please, I'm saying take them in order. Refinement first, then observation. Don't observe things in a mess. If your mind is ragged, your breathing is ragged and everything, I'm going to practice this meditation of observation now, you're going to get very disappointed and very, very reactive. That's the opposite of Vipassana. Non-reaction, Ashobha in Vedanta, is what you want. Then when you examine things in a proper way, you get equanimity. It says, availing the mind of detachment and non-reactivity. And this is where you turn from a person who believes the world's permanent to a person who knows it's not. It's impermanent. Anicca, it's called. So it's impermanent. It's not real. It doesn't last. It's shifting sands. Birds have nests, foxes have holes, and so forth and so on. In every tradition, you can go on and on finding out these great seers saying, you must transcend the world of nature. Back to the samskara on the chart, right? But they're trying to unwrap, because they might have lived, one of them or both of them might have lived many lifetimes thinking the world is real, that Prakriti is real. It's a sub-reality. You can give it that much. Finally, with that equanimity brought to bear, you get deeper insight. So where does deep insight come for the seers? After all this has been mastered, it's like Holy Mother saying, did samadhi ever happen to a person who didn't have deep devotion? One time they just gave everything to the Lord, and then samadhi happened. But that never happened to someone who didn't have any practice. It's like Krishna saying in the Gita, this world is not for one who does not possess sacred fire. Neither is the next. So they're not happy here in this world if they don't have this fire of sacrifice to the Lord. Where you put food into your body, that's the fire of sacrifice. That's prasad, gives you prana, good prana. And you put bad thoughts, destroy them with that fire, and you get positive thoughts. So all of this has grounding in all the darshanas. That's why we talk about sarva darshana. All of these methods are open to us to use almost indiscriminately. You say, well, I'm going to choose from that one. I can choose from that one. I can choose from that one. But you can only do that when you've established yourself in this one, right? The many only become helpful to you if you're established in the one. If you're not, then the many draw you into different places. Restless mind is spiritually restless mind too begins to happen. So choose one ideal, one mantra, one guru, one path, establish yourself in it. And once you're established, then you can move out amongst all the darshanas and draw these beautiful teachings from them without fear of, I've said people, well, can I do this without like betraying my path? Like people would come to me for Vedanta and yoga, but they were Christians. Can I do this without betraying Jesus? Well, of course you can. Was Jesus a Christian? So basically, it's an ism you're talking about. Right now, all of politics is still fighting between communism and capitalism. It's the two poles of everything. And they've divided themselves into different political factions and different parties inside of one country. And so this is why they cannot come to any resolution or any peace inside themselves and help each other, which is the whole purpose of politics. It's supposed to be to help one another, to help people. Anyway, I won't get started in that trajectory, but these are the 4 stages of Vipassana. We looked at the 3 types of Upasana and then Vipassana. Let's look more and deeper into them. So, and we have just enough time, I think, to do this. Basically, you can see there are 4 axioms to Vipassana. First, mind purification. Detached witnessing of imperfections in life and mind. Didn't I already say that? Don't look at your mind and try to observe it before you've done some purificatory practices. It's not usually a good idea. You'd have to be very strong to not get totally imbalanced by looking at your mind without having some sort of practice, like a mantra or like an ideal, an ishtam. Those are the 2 most powerful guards or guides in you, is your ishtam, your chosen ideal, and the mantra your guru gave you. And then along the line after those come, checking into the seers, what they say in the scriptures, and then inquiring into vichara Shakti, inquiring into the teachings with your guru. So basically, mind purification ideally should happen early on, at least some of it. And then second axiom is body and mind integration. Watch the connections between matter and awareness. I would say, if Tataksha Lakshana, if you made a wrong conclusion when you're practicing that, then you'd select matter as your refuge. But you will, if you're a sensitive spiritual aspirant, you will see that matter is decaying and consciousness isn't. So any person in their right spiritual mind is going to choose awareness. I'll follow the path of consciousness, please, because matter is shifting sands. Birds have nests and foxes have holes in it, but I have no place to lay my head there. See, I'm going to go the ray of awareness. And then when you have that kind of conclusion, then you can recognize truth. Affirming the relative truths of anicca and dukkha and anatta, I'm sorry. So anicca, dukkha, and anatta would be impermanence, suffering, and realizing that the ego self doesn't exist, that you have no self. It's shouldn't be wrongly interpreted, like sometimes it gets in terms of Buddhism, some schools. Of course, you have a great self. Buddha even said so in the Dhammapada. There's two selves in me, the small self and the great self. So are you going to get rid of the great self just because you want to get rid of the small self? The great self will remain. We call that Atman. And the Anatman is the ego. It's very easy to make these conclusions. Otherwise, tataksha lakshana, you're going to make false conclusions about it, and whole philosophies will get misled. And people getting into them will get misled. And we want sarvadarshana, right? We want this beautiful realization that Sri Ramakrishna had about that God being the essence in all religions. That's where we're moving in this day and age. Quick, before the darkness of Kali Yuga overtakes everything and makes everyone forget. So those are called the threefold problems in Buddhism. Basically, impermanence, suffering, and lack of self, or attachment to a self that doesn't really exist, the ego. Then finally, so you recognize that, and that puts you in a new league. You're not then hoping for anything in the world. Really, Buddha said, have no hope for me anymore for the world. I'm gone and gone forever. So that gone could be he's one and done, and the bodhisattvas will come back, but he won't, whatever the case. But it could also be that he's gone from ignorance and he's never coming back to it, right? I've realized everything is impermanent here. I have no home here, like Jesus said. I'm now established in consciousness. Follow me there, right? This, before that appear matter and awareness, did you make the right choice? So he's told you and been the exemplar to what to choose. Your own divine consciousness, Buddha nature, choose that. Therefore, you will have made that divine shift that makes you non-reactive to things that are unreal, the things that happen in a dream. The things that happen in a dream affect you later? Mostly not. This is a dream, waking, and things happening here should also not affect you whatsoever. Impervious is a nice word in English. And to end here, then, non-reactivity, freedom from suppression, judgment, and expression of thoughts happens. So non-reactivity means that you don't have to suppress anything anymore because you realize it's not really real. How can you suppress something that's not real? It was never there in the first place. So pramadina nasandeha kim karishyami vrittiman, the Babaji says, the yogi just lets things rise and fall out of the mind and doesn't react to them. If anything sticks at the end of the day, he dissolves it back in. Buddhischa. Nice that they use Buddha's name even for bubbles. Buddhischa, yata jale. He dissolves it back into the mind that's constantly doing this. Why? Because it's dual by nature, and you're the witness of it. So all of that is what's happening in terms of suppression or not. And judgments go away. Basically, people who are judging you outside of you, most of us can get over that. Oh, whatever you think, it's your opinion. But the judgments you make on yourself are very harsh and very hard. And that sometimes is a schooling for the soul, is to look at itself and practice self-inquiry. Basically that's what these two are doing when they're hearing some of these very obvious and pointed teachings from the scriptures that the Guru is giving them. And expression of thoughts get checked too. See, maybe I don't want to think that way. Maybe I don't want to manifest my thoughts. Because sometimes you manifest what's within you and it turns out in a negative way. It has a adverse effect on things around you. So you're very discriminating about how you use your thoughts. And sometimes you want to just dissolve them at the source. So these are some axioms of Vipassana, which is definitely much leaning more towards formless awareness, whereas Upasana leans more towards dynamic power. Here you see Shiva and Shakti holding hands, right? So there you have that togetherness of Lord Shiva and divine Shakti. And taking a few extra minutes for this class just so we can finish this chart. And actually, I think I can start off class 3 with these two. So we can just look at this one more time, like we did this one more time, and cement in some of those great teachings into it. So we'll start here next Sunday and with this and kind of give an overview. Then we'll go and show about this Tataksha Lakshana, these false conclusions that get into the whole, you want to be helped up the mountain, not be dangling. It's a mountain climbing theme there behind it, metaphorically speaking. So basically, we'll look at both of those next week, and we'll also look at the power of concentration, because I have you a graph to show you about how to concentrate on things. I think I had one. Give you a flash look at it here. How to concentrate and measure the power of your concentration. Manana Shakti and Nitya Pralaya were two things shown on this previous chart. So we'll look deeper into that. And I believe that will end our 3-class series and we'll be able to complete this presentation on Samara Shakti and how important it is for us to bring this all together in this day and age in terms of an intense spiritual practice that nets us some spiritual growth. Om Dvaita Dukam Mula Dvaitam Advaitam Nirvachardam Vibhavam. Om. It is that primal error of dual vision which causes the soul to suffer. Only that non-dual wisdom, special quality, can destroy that suffering and render your eye single again. For consciousness itself is non-dual by nature, and you are the eternal seer of consciousness. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om.